welcome back to the Morbid Files. I'm your host, Texxx, and tonight I have a very exciting guest, someone I've been wanting to get on for a good while. That is the one, the only, Anthony Brownlee. Anthony, welcome, man.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Definitely. Having some technical difficulties, but you gotta love Skype, man. You gotta love Skype. So how you been?
I've been good, man. Busy as usual.
Right, definitely, man. Um, well, if you don't mind, Anthony, we'll go ahead and get into this. Tell us a little bit about who you are and kind of where you come from.
You always know I'm Anthony Brownlee, born and raised in Ohio. Mega horror fan, definitely. Horror is pretty much ingrained in my DNA. Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
one of my earliest memories of horror had to be when I was about 3. And that would be seeing Thriller actually for the first time. That
Thriller?
was probably like Thriller, yeah, Michael Jackson's Thriller, like
Yeah.
15. I saw it. My dad turned MTV on. This is probably about 1989, something like one of my first memories, or close to my first memories. And I hadn't really seen anything scary at that point, and just watching him turn into the wolf and then seeing the zombies rise up. As a kid, it was just kind of like, whoa, like it's like I almost didn't know how to react at first, and then I remember having a nightmare about it not too long after that, and that was some of my earliest memories of actually being afraid. Like, wow. For me, it wasn't even the zombies. It was just that whole transformation scene.
Yeah.
Him just turning into that wolf. It wasn't like the old school where you saw his whole body just changed. The
Right.
teeth ripping up his skin because the nails were protruding from his fingers. It was just, as a 3-year-old, it was just fascinating. And,
Right.
But then a couple years later, I saw Nightmare on Elm Street for the very first time, and that movie was the one that pretty much solidified me as a horror fan. Like, established
Okay.
that film and that story was just amazing to me. And I had never seen anything like it. It scared the crap out of me, but I couldn't stop watching it.
Right.
I watched it 100 times as a kid. And this was off an old VHS tape recorded off of like HBO, like old school HBO.
Oh, yeah.
So it was really bad, before all the remastered stuff came out.
Right.
So it was, really, really bad quality. But, the story was just amazing. And it kind of set me off on this journey of me writing. And like when I write, I'm always chasing after Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, I want to create a story that's just as good as that. To me, Wes Craven, I hold him up on a template. Like, he was like, to me, the master of horror. Everybody has their own, idol and who they think the master of horror is. But for me, it will always be Wes Craven because
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, this amazing script that just, stands the test of time. And I don't really, they always say, like, Halloween started the, kind of like the slasher genre, kicked it off in the 80s. And,
Right.
I mean, I can understand that because there was a lot of films that took after Halloween. But I felt like Nightmare was like a standalone film. Like, it was very innovative. And, Nancy Thompson was like one of the most radical, like, heroines I'd ever seen. She was a young 15-year-old girl who stood up to this supernatural demon, and it wasn't like she could, get a gun, shoot him, or
Right.
whatever. She had to rely on her own strength, and on top of that, she went after him.
Right.
She wait for him to come to her, and you didn't see that in the films. Just a lot of times, the heroine would kind of feel like something was going on, and about 20 minutes before the film ends, then when she finds all the dead bodies, and she's more or less reacting to finding them and running. But Nancy, she took charge. She set her house up with booby traps, and went into that final dream and hunted him down and brought him into her world, and pretty much faced off with him.
Right.
And
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, with people saying how Michael and Jason kind of started it, but I'm like you, when Freddy came on the scene, he kind of brought something new because really up to Freddy, Jason and Michael, they had no personality. They,
Right.
They didn't say anything, and then here comes, this guy named Freddy, and, part one, the original, he don't say much, a whole lot like in the third and fourth ones, but he still had kind of a personality, and I think that's what made it a lot too different than those. So, totally agree, man.
Definitely.
Yeah. So you would say Thriller, man? That's interesting. Thriller was
Yeah.
your first introduction to horror, man. Wow.
Very first introduction.
That's pretty cool, man. I remember mine. It was used to go over my aunt's, and she had the old VHSs and stuff, and she had the old VCR of the one that would pop up. I don't know if you ever seen those. It would kind of pop up, and
I think I do
the tape
remember
in and
those.
push it
I think
down.
my parents had one of those.
And she had Night of the Living Dead, and I remember watching that at a young age, and man, that scared the crap out of me. I mean, I was terrified, and I remember going by graveyards and stuff, and just freaked out at a young age. And then here comes, Jason, and then when Freddy came along, that's what did it for me, man. It won me over, and I'm 33 years old, man, and still love it. Still love it.
Right. I mean, I've been the same way since like 5 years old. Like I said, that's when it was established. Like, I don't know. It just rooted something in me that I just have never been able to like escape from. Even I mean, I would never want to escape from it. It's just always been kind of like part of me.
Right.
And so like once I saw that movie, I wanted to watch as kind of like many horror movies as possible. So because at that age, you mostly just heard Freddy, Michael, Jason.
Yeah.
You didn't really hear about the kind of sub movies like Hell Night and April Fool's Day and just kind of those random slash movies that were all throughout the 80s and the 70s. So.
Right.
But so some of my introduction to those was actually watching Monster Vision and USA Up All Night, throughout the 90s, and that's what really got me into the old school horror like the 70s and 80s, and I just realized I love those just as much as I love Nightmare. Each one has its own individual appeal.
Right. Yeah.
And it just like I said, just kind of captured me, and honestly. My grandmother, she actually introduced me to the oldie horror movies. Like, she was the one I would, try to show her, oh, you gotta see this movie, Jason, it's awesome, and this killer, and, this, and I would show her those, and she said, well, let me show you some of the movies that I watched when I was growing up. And so first, like, kind of like old school movie that I ever saw was The Birds.
Yeah.
The Birds.
Yeah. Nice.
And that followed up with Psycho.
Mm-hmm.
And Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and this is all from her. And then I saw The Blob, the 1958 version. I didn't even know there was, a 50s version. I was so used to the 1988 version.
Right.
So it, just all that, accumulation of horror, just, like I said, just solidified me as a fan, and it made me appreciate. What came in the past, like the old, like I said, like the old school horror movies. So,
yeah. Well, looking back, I mean, obviously you started at a young age watching horror and stuff. What's your take on today's horror films versus the older days, like when me and you were growing up with the the slashers and Freddy, Jason, and all them? What's your take on the newer stuff? Because I mean, the reason I ask, because a lot of people I talk to, they say, Hollywood's lost its creativity when it comes to the horror genre. It's just replay. So what's your thoughts, man?
I do kind of agree with the others a little bit. I haven't been too impressed with some of the horror movies that have come out within the last decade or so, going that far back. I mean, of course you have like your good ones in between. Like, I thought Insidious was really creative. I guess what got me about that film was that they it was one of those films that just relied on scares. It didn't have like all the blood and gore and like, or as they call it, like the torture porn movies like Saw. Like, it just was like old school scares. And even I have to admit, that movie came out, I think, when I was 25. and I really hadn't been scared by a horror movie like that since I was about 12.
Yeah.
And I said, if it could get me like that, I can, actually hold that one in high regard.
Yeah.
For a movie that come out in today's, kind of modern day take on horror. But I don't know. There just hasn't been a lot of that. It's just it's been a lot of remakes too, and I've actually been disappointed with a lot of the remakes. And sad to say, I was really disappointed with the Nightmare remake.
Oh yeah.
It just did not hold it. I mean, not even a torch to the original. It just seemed, and I guess what kind of makes me mad about it is that people keep saying, well, now it's 2009 or 2010 when it came out. Now they have all this CGI that will make it better, and I actually watched that scene where that Nancy character is sitting in her bed, and Freddy's supposed to be coming through the wall.
Yeah.
And it looks CGI, and I said, this scene and the original scene looks 100 times better, and they just use latex and lighting, and it actually looks like he's coming through the wall in the original, as opposed to it looks CGI and it looks like he's swimming through the wall. That's the kind of thing that kind of makes me mad about today's horror. Especially, I feel like they're kind of I guess gearing it more towards the audience now, and I feel like today's audience, the younger audience, they want like instant gratification. Like, so there's not a whole lot of development with characters and with the story. It's like you get your main cast and they kind of take elements from what we had before, and then just throw something scary in there, and then like we have your final climax, and that's the end. And it's kind of like, what did I just spend an hour 30 minutes watching?
Right. Yeah. I'm gonna say this, and some people might disagree with me or whatever, but I feel some movies need to just be left alone. They were perfect for just the way they were. Don't need to be remade.
Totally agree.
As hard as it is for me to say, because as horror fans and as Nightmare on Elm Street fans we still want more Freddy. No matter what. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I feel like they're perfect the way they were. They don't need to be remade.
Right.
And I know a lot of other people, they want to see the remakes, and that's fine. But for me, personally, I just think they were perfect the way they were. So.
Mm-hmm. I might say, why not, instead of making remakes, why don't you just make modern day sequels?
Yeah.
Don't call it, like this is the brand new start of this. Like, kind of go back to the, old story, because there's plenty of stories that you could use. Yeah. You could always go back to Elm Street and, make Freddy come back somehow. Look, part 4, he was resurrected by a dog pissing fire. As cheesy as it was, it worked and it brought him back. Yeah. Sure, today they could come up with something a little bit more, creative, but there's always ways to like kind of like resurrect a story without like complete. So.
Right.
Yeah. That's my opinion on it. I know like some people do, kind of like the remakes. I guess just for me as being such an older horror fan, it's just not working for me.
Right. Yeah. And two, I think with us being original Nightmare on Elm Street fans, it's hard to replace Robert.
Oh.
I know a lot of people get mad when you say that, but it's the truth. It's hard. There'll never be another one like him. So.
Never.
He is Freddy.
Right.
Well, man, let's move on a little bit. You're an author.
Yes.
You authored 5 books, I think. Published 5 books.
Yes. 5. Yeah, published 5 so far.
Wow, man. How did you get into writing and everything? Was it? I know you mentioned with the Nightmare on Elm Street kind of got you. Was that really what took it off? Made you want to start writing?
That initially was like the start, and like I said, I wanted to create like a story that would get people how Nightmare got me. So being young, it's kind of hard to be really worldly and kind of venture out and find like those great ideas. All you can look at stuff that's happening right in front of you, like stuff that's happening in school, or maybe like a movie you see, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I started off writing like just real short stories, and it would just be like really campy, just short stories that were kind of, almost typical, and kind of just had typical scenarios, because that's all I knew. Like, like I said, I wasn't really worldly then. 2006 is when I wrote my first book, Mayhem.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me about a year to write it, and it went through a lot of rewrites at that point, because I had my initial story, and I wanted to find something that would make it scary. So initially it was just about two escaped convicts who kind of descend on this campsite where teenagers are it's almost like a school project type of thing, where they get a handful of students to go to this site or campsite to kind of get to know each other and be interactive, instead of kind of getting them away from electronics, and be around kids their age and different kids their own age, and kind of take them out their comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to make it more scary than that, and what really even scares me today are actually clowns.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like, I've always had ever since watching it when I was younger, I've had like a fear of clowns, so that's always kind of stayed with me. Even though I still watch horror movies with clowns in them.
Oh yeah.
But so I added that clown element because I knew what scared me about clowns. So I was like, well, maybe I can project that into the story and get people what makes me afraid about them and get them afraid about them.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where it started, and it just kind of took off from there. And it's actually a trilogy series, even though the first book I only have the first book released. It's 3 books, and like there's 3 survivors in the story that carry it on throughout the trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I actually, in between the actual stories, there's 1, 2, and 3, but in between 1 and 2 I have 1.5 back to normal, and then after 2 it's 2.5 back to normal again.
Nice.
Because I thought it'd be interesting to see, like, okay, all the craziness and the murders that's ended. Okay, what do we do now? Like, we go back to school, we live our lives, and how different life is going to be for them now, because now they're in the public eye for being infamous for being survivors, in a sense. It's kind of like, how do you deal with that? And then, like, in the movies, you always see them just come back for a sequel, but what happened in between that time, what got them from the end of the first story to the beginning of the second story.
Right.
So, that was kind of like my way of wanting to do something different,
Nice.
With the books.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
So once I got done with Mayhem, I just had all these stories in me that I just wanted to tell, and it got easier after that. Once I wrote the first long story, then I was able to, go on and write the other stories. Clandestine is one that I wrote. It's actually my longest book. It's almost 700 pages.
Oh wow!
And yeah, wow. That was I couldn't even believe it got that long. But it was actually more of a personal story with a horror twist. It's actually a story about bullying.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it has this horror twist on it, and that's something that I can relate to, because pretty much from grade school all the way till I graduated, I just had been bullied in school. So I had all these stories, and I'd always thought, like, what if all that anger and hate and sadness and everything that comes along with that, embarrassment, humiliation, what if that energy had formed into one being, and what would that being do? So it almost just kind of wrote itself. Like I said, it was long, but that book took me like less than a year.
Wow.
To write.
Wow. I'm definitely gonna have to check some of your books out, man. It's very interesting. With your writings, do you look to any other authors for inspiration when it comes to your writings?
I would definitely Wes Craven's definitely at the top, and with him, I look at a lot of Stephen King, because Stephen King is very good with detail, and I like a lot of detail in my writing, and I'm very I say very character driven.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of people can be plot driven and what have you, but I feel like if you can't get on board with the characters, then how are you going to follow the story?
Right.
So I looked at a lot of Stephen King's books, and especially um, that novel. It's a really long novel. I've read it twice, but it's so much about the characters.
Yeah.
And, these characters dealing with this evil entity, and that's what kind of got me into the idea of dramatic horror films. It's like drama situations, but then you have this horror element that's like disrupting the drama.
Right.
So I've always been fascinated with dramatic horror films. So I've always felt like Nightmare on Elm Street was like the dramatic horror movie.
Yeah.
Not just a slasher.
Right.
It's a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, with Stephen King's, man, people say the book's always better than the movies. And
Right.
when it comes to Stephen King, man, his books, I mean, his movies are great. The movies are great, but when you read the books, 10 times better, man.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a huge fan. I love The Stand. Have you saw The Stand or read The Stand by Stephen King?
I have actually never read it. I've seen the movie, but it's like
That's one of
every
my
time I
favorites.
pick up that book, I'm just like,
Yeah. I can't remember how long it took me to read that book, but I did, and I was proud of myself. But it's great, man. It's one of my favorites by him. So,
It's awesome. I do. I really. It's in that to me, and that's very character driven, type story about these survivors.
yeah, definitely. Well, let's talk about a little film that maybe everyone knows and heard of. Don't Fall Asleep, fan film, man.
Oh yeah.
Which was phenomenal. I mean, it was freaking great. I love it.
So,
How did you get into or involved with the film and everything?
well, how that came about was actually Paige and DeAndre are actually my really good friends. I've known them. I'd say going on at least 7 years now. We just met on Facebook first, and then became friends because we went to a lot of the conventions together, and it just kind of formed this friendship over the years. And we all connected because we all love Nightmare,
Right.
and not just Nightmare, but we all love the character of Nancy. And so I had always had stories like that, like a Nancy story, like the things that she had gone through, and they were had the same thing in mind, and they actually had written the script for it, and they let me see it, and when I saw it, I was like, this was stuff that I was thinking myself, like so we were already on the same level
Right.
at that point, and they asked me to come on board for it because they just knew how big of a fan I was, and I just said I would help in any capacity. I don't care, I mean, if you want me to be like a dead body just lying in the hallway, you don't even see my
Right.
face. I didn't even care. Like, I really wanted to be a part of this, and so they were gracious enough to give me a character of the orderly who originally was going to have a much longer scene, but just with kind of like how the movies are made, certain things get cut out and certain things you can't do because you're kind of like crunched for time.
Right.
But I had a scene at the beginning, and then but what I did most was do all the behind the scenes interviews, so all the cast and crew interviews, and getting everybody's perspective on this fan film. And this was one that really nobody's getting paid for. It was just out of the love for the film.
Right.
And, we wanted to make a really good fan film, not just something that was just kind of cheesy and thrown together. Like, we really wanted this to be something kind of significant. And so like it just all came together.
Nice. Yeah. And took off, man.
Right. I couldn't even believe how many, how much it just took off that way. Like, I mean, obviously I knew there were like a kind of like a market for it in a sense, because a lot of people love the character of Nancy, but the support we got from it was just incredible. Like, like I said, I couldn't even believe it.
Right. Yeah, it was awesome. Well, how was it working with DeAndre and Paige? I'm gonna put you on the spot here.
Oh, it was, No, it was we all hated each other. Like we no we like I said, we have become like such good friends. It's like a brother and sister relationship. I mean, me and Deandra are always goofing around. Like she always calls me sassy. She claims that like I'm the most sassiest person she's ever met. I'm like, I don't even like I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not. And then like we just always had this bickering going back and forth. It's I mean, like I said, it's like such a brother and sister dynamic that just made it fun because you're making this film with like like your best friends who are like pretty much like family to you. So it's very easy to work with people like that. And like I said, we all kind of like know each other so well that that we just kind of fed off of each other.
Right.
Like we would take advice from each other about certain things or how things would look, and it just worked. It just clicked.
Nice, man. Yeah, I've had Paige and Deandra on the show before, and man, I think a lot of them they're really cool people, great people.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they are. They are awesome people.
Yeah, definitely, and very talented, man.
Yes. I'm actually learning a lot from, especially when we shot Don't Fall Asleep. Like, that was aspects that I really never had seen them because we had never been in that particular, kind of venture before. Like,
Right.
I saw Paige kind of, like take charge when things need to be, handled, and, she was very professional. And then like to see Deandra like, play Nancy and like her acting skills. It's like, I didn't even, know that you had that in you. Like,
Right.
I mean, I would always be at the convention together. She had one of the Nancy pajamas and, kind of being a character. And you're like, oh, okay, like, you can kind of do that. But then, to actually carry that for a whole film and to be that character was just, it was just a phenomenal trait.
Right. Very nice, man. Well, I asked pretty much all my guests, or try to ask all my guests that come on the show this, and I probably know your answer. But what is your favorite out of all the Nightmare on Elm Street films? Which one is your favorite and why?
Okay, it's actually funny because it's actually two. I can never say it's one or the other, but
that's fine.
The original Nightmare, obviously, and New Nightmare, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Those two are my absolute, not just my absolute favorite Nightmare films or horror films, but my favorite films in general.
Okay, nice.
And that's because they're just so creative. I mean, like I said, Wes created this, awesome story of this, dream killer. The foundation of that, you can't fall asleep, and how can you not sleep? There are days when I'm just like exhausted and can't wait to crash down. Then to imagine like I can't sleep because this is going to happen, like how much torture that would be.
Right.
And that's why I always felt that Nightmare was so universal, because how can you not sleep?
Mm-hmm.
So that gets to people on a lot of levels, and he was really good with that. And then 10 years later, after 5 sequels, to come up with something just as innovative as that first film, instead of just making another sequel, he made something very profound in that. You bring all your original characters back, but not play their characters, but play themselves.
Yeah.
And that, Freddy was this, had become so big that he had become his own entity, and now wanted to break out into the real world.
Yeah.
And that was just so fascinating. I mean, I personally had never seen anything like that before or since.
Yeah.
It came out, and that's why. And then my favorite thing in New Nightmare is just him telling Heather like why this is happening, and that it's because of storytellers that these entities can kind of be trapped.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like the story becomes so popular that it becomes something that becomes out of your hands, and it's no longer something that you can control.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that film just struck me so much, and that was one I wish I had been able to see that one in theaters. I mean, but you know, at the time we saw it, we rented it from Blockbusters or something like that. But you know, because I wasn't even born when the original Nightmare came out, and I was
Right.
really young when the sequels came out. So that one could have been the one that I could have seen at the movies, but you know, it just it wasn't, didn't happen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Going back to what you said about not being able to sleep and stuff. I've said this before, but that's what really terrified me of Freddy. And I mean, Jason and Michael, of course, they were scary to me. But always in my mind as a young kid, I would always say, okay, I can run away. I can move to a different state or country and get away from Jason and Michael.
Right.
But sooner or later, I'm going to have to go to sleep. I can't get away from this guy, and it terrified me, man. But I kept wanting more and more, and yeah, so it was great. Well, Anthony, what's next, man? What's next for Anthony Brownlee? What's some projects you got coming up, or some new books you're coming out with?
What's next for me? Well, book-wise, like I said, I'm actually working on 2 books now. Well, actually, I actually had just finished one late last year and was getting some drawings done for it. And that one should be out sometime this year. It's called Resurrected. And the other 2 I'm working on, Walking with the Dandelions, which is actually a drama, which will be my second drama novel. The first one is a story of 2 brothers. And, even though I love horror, I just feel like, it's kind of good to expand out a little bit. Mm-hmm. And, just kind of, just see, where your oats will kind of take you, with this, kind of writing gift. So, like I said, I've only got 2 dramas, but the other horror I'm working on at the same time as this one is called Fear of Silence. And as I was working on the drama, I got to chapter 5, and at the same time I had been thinking of this horror story that I wanted to tell, and it was like it's so weird writing dramas because I'm such a horror person. It's writing kind of like these sentimental scenes. I'm like, somebody's supposed to be dying right now. I'm not feeling that horror juice coming. I need some screams right now. So I said I gotta work on at least this one while I'm working on this drama, because otherwise I just didn't feel artistically. I don't know the best word to describe it. Just I need that. I just kind of need that horror adrenaline. Even even when I'm working on the drama, even in some of my dramas, I have these horror elements of nightmare scenes, and just something's got to be horror in there, for me.
Cool, man.
So those will probably be out maybe sometime next year.
Okay.
We'll hope, fingers crossed on those, because say life is kind of a 9-to-5 job thrown in there. So
yeah, I know how that is, trust me.
Yeah. So that kind of keeps keeps me kind of buckled down a little bit.
Right.
But other than the books, I've been working on some film projects. Actually got to do a film project last year called Gorehammer with the Northgate Pictures with some other friends of mine who run a production company. And got to do a few scenes in that, which was fun. Because actually once we did Don't Fall Asleep, I hadn't been on a film set for at least a decade before I did Don't Fall Asleep. So just kind of being back in that realm,
back.
Right, it's kind of like, great welcome back to it. Right. It was just really fun, just to kind of throw that in there, and then also working on a documentary which we just announced today. Actually, mm-hmm. It went live. I can't talk too much about that because it's kind of right. Little secrets going on with that. So, but people know this out there now. It's called Fred Heads, and obviously the name pretty much just says it all. Yeah. And working on that with our film company Vin Pictures, and which includes DeAndre and Paige, my friend Kim, and my friend Taylor. So we're all gonna be working on this together.
All right. I'm definitely looking forward to that one. So yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Cool, man. Yeah, I definitely have mad respect for authors, man. I mean, to sit there and take the time to write, come up, and I could not do it. So I have mad respect for you guys, man. Definitely.
Thanks, I
Well,
appreciate it.
Anthony, where can people find out more about you and your books if they would want to purchase them? Or
Oh, if you want to find out some stuff about me a little bit, you can read my bio on my Facebook page. Just under Anthony Brownlee. I'm also on Instagram as Anthony the Dreamer, and I also have another bio on Vim Pictures on that website, which is also a Facebook page. And my books are actually available on Amazon.
okay,
So the best way to get to those, I find that the best way is to just type in my whole name, which is actually Mark Anthony Brownlee, Mark with the C. And the very first thing that you can, kind of tag on, it's like Mark Anthony, Amazon, Google Books. And just click on that, and it'll just take you right to the book page, and it'll just have all the books lined up.
awesome, awesome. Yeah. So go get some. Go follow him on Instagram. And Anthony, man, it's been an awesome time. I appreciate you coming on.
Oh man, thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Definitely, man. And yeah, you're welcome back anytime when you come out with your new book or whatever, man. Let me know. Come back and we'll discuss it a little bit.
Awesome, definitely.
Yeah,
Can't
man.
wait to get it out there, man.
Definitely, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for this show. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you have not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit subscribe for future shows. And until next time, you know the deal. Stay safe.